On Christmas Eve, she escaped her abusive husband with nothing but her children and fear in her heart. No money, no shelter, no phone. The road was freezing, empty, and dangerous. Then a Hells Angel biker stopped behind her. And then suddenly, this story will surprise you. Before I continue, let me know in the comments, have you subscribed to the channel or not? And also tell me which city and country you are watching from, so that I can thank you personally. Christmas Eve was supposed to mean warmth, lights in windows, laughter behind doors, families gathering around dinner tables, pretending the world was kind. But for her, Christmas Eve meant survival. Snow fell softly onto the empty road, each step she took leaving behind a shallow footprint that vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. She wasn't running. Not anymore. Running wasted energy. She was moving forward with purpose, even if she didn't know where that purpose would end. Her baby slept fitfully in her arms, wrapped in a thin blanket that did little to keep the cold out. With her free hand, she held her daughter's hand tightly. The girl didn't complain. She hadn't complained in a long time. Children learn silence early when noise brings consequences. Her shoes were worn through at the soles. Her coat was too thin for the night air. And the bag slung over her shoulder held everything she owned in the world. 2 changes of clothes, a cracked phone with no signal, diapers, and a folded piece of paper she hadn't dared to read yet. No money, no shelter, no plan. Only a decision. That decision had been made hours earlier, inside a house filled with Christmas decorations that felt more like props in a lie than symbols of joy. The argument had started over nothing. It always did. A look. A word spoken too slowly. A question asked at the wrong time. "What did you do with the money?" His voice had thundered through the room. She had tried to answer calmly. Calm always made it worse. Her daughter had covered her ears before the shouting even peaked. The baby had started crying before the first threat was spoken. They knew the pattern better than she wished they did. And then came the moment, the one that finally broke through years of fear and excuses. Her daughter had looked at her, not at him, at her. The look wasn't confusion, it was expectation. As if the child was silently asking, "Are we staying again?" Something snapped, or maybe something finally aligned. She didn't scream, she didn't argue, she didn't beg. She waited for him to turn away. Then she moved. The bag, the children, the door. Her hands had trembled as she opened it, not because she was afraid to leave, but because she was afraid she wouldn't. When the door closed behind them, she knew there was no turning back. That door wasn't just wood and locks. It was a prison she had survived for years, convincing herself it was safer than the unknown. Now the unknown stretched out in front of her. The road was quiet. Too quiet. Houses passed by, each one glowing with warmth she no longer recognized as something meant for her. "Mom," her daughter whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. "Where are we going?" She slowed, but didn't stop. "Forward," she said. "Somewhere safe." It wasn't a lie. It was a promise she intended to keep, even if she didn't yet know how. Her baby shifted in her arms, small fingers curling into the fabric of her coat. She adjusted her grip, whispering comfort she wasn't sure she felt herself. Every passing car made her heart jump. Every sound behind her felt like pursuit. She didn't look back. Looking back meant doubt. Doubt meant stopping. The snow thickened as the night deepened. The cold settled into her bones, but she welcomed the sting. It reminded her she was awake, alive, moving. Then she heard it. At first, it was distant, a low rumble that blended with the wind. Then it grew louder. An engine. Her steps faltered. She stopped. Instinct took over. She pulled her children behind her, turning herself into a shield without thinking. Her body remembered how to brace for impact, physical or otherwise. The sound drew closer. A motorcycle. Her breath caught in her throat. Every warning she'd ever heard screamed in her head. Night. Empty road. Stranger. Leather jackets and danger. People like him were never the heroes in stories like hers. The headlight cut through the falling snow, flooding the road with harsh white light. She raised her arm instinctively, squinting. The motorcycle slowed, then stopped. The engine shut off. Silence rushed in, heavy and suffocating. She stood frozen, heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Her daughter's fingers dug into her coat. The baby whimpered softly. A figure swung a leg off the bike. Tall, broad shoulders, heavy boots crunching against the snow. A leather jacket marked with patches caught the light. Exactly the kind of man the world told her to fear. He removed his helmet. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he had stopped. She didn't know whether this moment would make everything worse. All she knew was this. On Christmas Eve, alone on a frozen road, her life had reached another crossroads, and whatever happened next would change everything. The silence after the motorcycle shut off was heavier than the cold. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that made every heartbeat feel loud, every breath feel exposed. The mother stood frozen. Instinct pushed her body forward as she pulled her children behind her, turning herself into a shield without thinking. Her daughter clutched the edge of her coat, fingers tight with fear. The baby stirred in her arms, sensing tension before understanding danger. The man stopped a few steps away. Snow crunched beneath his boots as he planted his feet, careful not to move closer. Leather jacket, broad shoulders, dark patches stitched across his chest, exactly the kind of man people warned her about. Her mind raced. Why did he stop? Is he alone? What if he followed us? She couldn't run. She wouldn't turn her back. "Please," she said, her voice shaking despite her effort to sound firm. "Just leave us alone." The man immediately raised both hands. Slow, open, non-threatening. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. His voice was deep, roughened by years of wind and engines, but not cruel. "I just saw you walking out here, with kids, in this weather." She said nothing. Words had failed her too many times before. She trusted actions, if she trusted anything at all. His eyes moved carefully, not staring, just noticing. Her worn shoes, the torn sleeve on her coat, the baby's tiny face, red from the cold. "This road isn't safe," he said quietly. "Not tonight." Her daughter shifted behind her, then peeked around her side. For the first time, the child looked directly at him. Her eyes were wide, cautious but curious. "You're not going to take us back, are you?" the girl asked in a small voice. The mother's breath caught. She hadn't said those words out loud. She hadn't needed to. Her daughter had learned fear too well. The man lowered himself slightly. Not crouching, not kneeling, just enough to bring his eyes closer to the girl's level. He didn't reach out. "No," he said firmly. "No one gets to force you anywhere. Not tonight, not ever." Something shifted inside the mother at those words. They didn't sound rehearsed. They sounded final. "We don't need help," she said quickly, as if saying it fast enough would make it true. "We're fine." It was the same sentence she'd used for years, with neighbors, with teachers, with herself. The man studied her face for a moment longer, then slowly unzipped his jacket. Her muscles tightened instantly. But instead of stepping forward, he slipped the jacket off and placed it gently on the snow between them, right in the open. Then he stepped back. "The baby's freezing," he said. "That's all." "No," she snapped. "We don't take things." She knew how help worked. Help always wanted something back. Help always came with strings. He didn't argue. "I'll leave it here," he said simply. "You decide." The wind howled harder, cutting through her coat. The baby whimpered, his tiny body trembling despite her attempts to keep him warm. She looked at the jacket, then at her child's lips, tinged faintly blue. Motherhood didn't care about pride. She reached down, grabbed the jacket and wrapped it tightly around the baby. Almost immediately, his crying softened. His breathing slowed. Tears burned her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. The man let out a slow breath, relief visible in the way his shoulders dropped. "My name's John," he said after a moment. "You don't need to remember it." She didn't reply. Names could be lies. Actions were harder to fake. Far in the distance, church bells began to ring, echoing faintly through the snowy night. Midnight wasn't far off. Christmas Eve was passing. The man glanced down the road, then back at her. "There's a diner not far from here," he said. "Open all night, warm. You can sit, think, figure out your next move." Suspicion flared instantly. "And then what?" she asked. "Then you leave," he said. "No pressure, no questions." Her daughter tugged lightly at her coat. "Mom, I'm cold." That settled it. The mother nodded once. "Just to warm up," she said. "Nothing else." He stepped aside, pointing down the road. "I'll walk ahead," he said, "so you don't feel chased." As he turned back toward his bike, she watched him carefully. She didn't trust him. Not yet. But for the first time that night, she allowed herself to consider something unfamiliar. Maybe this road didn't only lead away from danger. Maybe, just maybe, it was leading toward help. And she had no idea how much that single choice was about to change everything. They walked slowly down the road. The biker stayed a few steps ahead, exactly as he'd promised. Not close enough to feel threatening, not far enough to disappear into the darkness. He pushed his motorcycle beside him instead of riding it, letting the night remain quiet. The mother watched him carefully. Every movement, every pause, every breath. The leather jacket hung open now, leaving him exposed to the cold, but he didn't seem to notice. Her baby, wrapped inside that same jacket, was finally warm. His tiny body had stopped shaking. His breathing was steady. It shouldn't have mattered so much. But it did. For the first time in years, someone had eased her child's pain without demanding anything in return. Her daughter walked close at her side. She glanced up at the biker, then back at her mother, as if weighing a question too big for her age. "Mom," she whispered. "Is that man bad?" The question hit harder than the cold. The mother wanted to answer the way fear had trained her to. "Yes. Don't trust anyone. Everyone is dangerous." But she didn't say that. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But right now, he hasn't hurt us." The girl nodded slowly, accepting the truth exactly as it was. Uncertain, fragile, but real. Ahead, a soft yellow glow appeared through the falling snow, a single light standing against the dark. "That's the diner," the biker said, still not turning around. "Open all night." As they got closer, a new kind of fear settled in the mother's chest. Not the fear of being alone, but the fear of being seen. People, eyes, judgment. She knew what they would see. A poor woman in worn clothes, two exhausted children, and beside them, a biker with a reputation the world had already decided for him. The biker slowed his steps. "If you want," he said carefully, I can stay outside." She looked at him, surprised. That offer, space, choice, wasn't something she was used to. After a moment, she shook her head. "No," she said. "It's okay. You can come in." The words cost her more courage than she wanted to admit. The diner door opened with a soft chime, and warm air rushed over them. The smell of coffee and soup wrapped around her like something familiar from a life she barely remembered. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. A few people looked up. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations faded. Their eyes moved from her children, to her, and finally to the biker. Silence followed. The mother instinctively pulled her children closer. She knew this silence. It was the kind that came right before judgment. The biker noticed immediately. "You sit," he said gently, gesturing toward a booth. "I'll order." He stepped away before she could object, moving toward the counter and creating a clear distance between them. Another silent reassurance. She guided her children into the booth. The seat was warm beneath them. Her daughter's feet dangled above the floor. "Mom," the girl said quietly. "It's warm here." The mother nodded, unable to speak. At the counter, the biker spoke in a low voice to the waitress. The mother couldn't hear the words, but his tone was calm, respectful, not demanding. She waited for the stares to return. Some did. Others softened. A woman at the far end of the diner smiled gently at her children. Someone else looked away, uncomfortable. Then the waitress approached. She placed a steaming bowl of soup in front of the mother. Another smaller bowl followed. "For you," she said softly. "And something for the kids is coming." The mother's breath caught. "We didn't," she started. "It's okay," the waitress interrupted kindly. "It's Christmas Eve." Her hands trembled as she wrapped them around the bowl. She didn't eat yet. She just held it, letting the warmth seep into her palms. Her daughter leaned closer. "Mom, are we safe now?" The mother looked around the diner. The lights, the warmth, the quiet hum of normal life. She wasn't sure if safety was something that came all at once, or in small moments like this. "I think," she said slowly, "for right now, yes." At the counter, the biker finished paying. He didn't look back at them as he placed the money down. "No questions," he said simply. "No stories." Those words carried more protection than any threat ever had. He returned to the booth, but stopped a few feet away. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "You warm up. When you're ready, you decide what's next." Her daughter began eating, careful and slow, like she was afraid the food might disappear. The baby slept peacefully against her chest. The mother finally lifted her spoon. The soup was hot, real, filling, and as it spread warmth through her body, she felt something else rise alongside it, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a very long time. Relief. She didn't trust the biker. Not completely. But for the first time since she'd left that house, she trusted the moment she was in. And sometimes, she realized, one safe moment was enough to change the direction of an entire life. Steam rose slowly from the bowl of soup. When the mother lifted the first spoonful to her lips, her eyes closed for a brief second, not because of the taste, but because of the memory it carried. Warmth without fear. Food without shouting. A moment that didn't require vigilance. She ate slowly, deliberately, as if moving too fast might shatter the fragile peace surrounding them. Across from her, her daughter sat quietly, watching the bowl as if it might disappear. She glanced up at her mother, silently asking permission. The mother nodded. The girl took her first sip, her eyes widened. "Mom, it's good," she whispered, like speaking too loudly might take it away. The mother managed a small smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. Her body was still tense, still trained to expect danger even in calm. Around them, the diner slowly returned to life. Forks clinked against plates, coffee cups were set down with soft taps, low conversations resumed in cautious tones. But not every pair of eyes had turned away. Some people still glanced in their direction, some at the children, some at the biker. The mother knew those looks well. She could almost hear the unspoken questions. Why is she with him? Is she safe? Or is he the reason she looks like this? She had lived under judgment long enough to recognize it instantly. What unsettled her wasn't the stairs. It was how the biker handled them. He didn't sit too close. He didn't hover. He didn't position himself as their protector in a way that demanded attention. Instead, he stayed slightly apart, close enough to be present, far enough to give space, as if he understood that real safety didn't need to announce itself. The waitress returned, carrying a small plate of sandwiches cut into neat pieces. "For the kids," she said gently. "Take your time." The mother opened her mouth. "We can pay—" The waitress shook her head softly. "It's Christmas Eve," she said. "Sometimes that's reason enough." The mother swallowed hard and nodded, lowering her gaze. This time it wasn't shame. It was gratitude she wasn't used to feeling. Her daughter took a small bite of the sandwich. She chewed slowly, thoughtfully. Then she leaned against the booth. "Mom, I'm tired," she murmured. The word struck deeper than the cold ever had. Tired didn't just mean sleepy, it meant exhausted from listening, from watching, from being afraid. The mother reached out and brushed her daughter's hair back, her hand lingering longer than usual. As she did, the biker spoke, quietly, carefully. "You don't have to stay here long," he said. "There's a small motel behind the diner, not fancy, but warm." The mother stiffened instantly. A motel meant walls, a closed door, a space where fear had always found her before. "No," she said quickly. "We're fine. We just need a little time." He didn't argue. "Okay," he said. "It's just an option." An option. The word echoed inside her. Her life hadn't been built on options. It had been built on endurance. Her daughter tugged gently at her sleeve. "Mom, can we lie down?" Her eyes were heavy, her voice slow. The baby slept deeply in the borrowed jacket, his face finally relaxed. The mother looked at both of them. She had been strong for years, strong enough to survive, strong enough to stay. But strength, she realized, didn't always mean standing. Sometimes it meant allowing rest. "Just one night," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "In the morning we leave." The biker nodded immediately. "That's fair." He walked to the counter. The mother couldn't hear what he said, but there was no force in his posture, no tension in his tone. When he returned, he placed a worn key gently on the table. A blue tag dangled from it. "Room 7, he said. "The heater works. The door locks from the inside." She stared at the key. It was old, scratched, ordinary, but to her it looked like something else entirely. A pause, a barrier, a night without fear. She took it, her fingers closing around the metal. They stepped back out into the cold. The snow still fell, but it no longer felt cruel. As they walked toward the motel, the biker stayed at the same careful distance, present but not intrusive. The mother glanced back once. For the first time since she had left that house, she wasn't looking over her shoulder in fear. She was looking forward. Because sometimes life doesn't change all at once. Sometimes it changes with a single choice. One night, one key, one moment of rest. The motel room was small. Faded paint clung to the walls. a single lamp cast a dim yellow glow, and outside the narrow window, snow continued to fall in slow, silent flakes. But within that plain space was the one thing the mother needed more than anything else: peace. The moment the door closed behind them, she reached for the lock. Once, then again. She knew she had already locked it. Her hands did it anyway. Habit, survival memory. Her daughter climbed onto the bed immediately. She pressed her palm against the blanket, then looked back at her mother, as if asking whether it was really allowed. "Mom, is this our room?" There was wonder in her voice. No fear. The mother nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "For tonight." The baby stirred softly in her arms. She carefully removed the biker's jacket and laid the child down on the bed. For the first time in a very long time, she placed her baby somewhere that did not echo with shouting or threats. The heater clicked on. Warm air filled the room gradually, chasing away the cold that had settled deep into her bones. She took off her coat and realized how heavy her shoulders felt, not just from exhaustion, but from carrying responsibility alone for so long. Her daughter kicked off her shoes and crawled beneath the blanket. Within minutes, her eyelids drooped. "Mom," she murmured sleepily. "That man, is he coming back?" The question tightened something in her chest. "Are you scared?" the mother asked gently. The girl shook her head. "No, just asking." The mother sat beside her and brushed her daughter's hair back. She lingered there longer than usual, committing the moment to memory. "He won't hurt us," she said quietly. "And even if he comes by, the door is locked." She realized she was speaking as much to herself as to her child. Silence settled over the room. Not the tense silence she was used to, the kind that came before explosions, but a soft, steady quiet that didn't demand anything from her. Her daughter fell asleep. The baby followed soon after, breathing slow and even. The mother remained awake. She sat in the chair near the bed, her hands resting on her knees, staring at nothing in particular. Her heart still beat faster than normal, but alongside the fear was something unfamiliar. Reflection. She replayed the day in her mind. The door closing behind her. The road. The motorcycle. The stranger who hadn't acted like the world said he would. She knew the stories people told about men like him. She'd believed them too. And yet everything she'd seen tonight contradicted those stories. She turned her gaze to the window. Snowflakes fell, melted, disappeared, only to be replaced by more. "Is it really over?" she asked herself. The answer didn't come easily. She knew morning would bring questions, money, shelter, legal steps she didn't fully understand, and the most terrifying question of all, the man she had left behind. Her hands began to shake. She clenched them into fists, forcing herself to breathe. Then came a soft knock at the door. Her heart slammed violently against her ribs. For a split second, old panic threatened to take over. Then a calm voice spoke from the other side. "It's me. I just wanted to let you know, if you need anything, I'm right across the way." She stood slowly, her steps careful. She stopped just short of the door and checked the lock again. "We're safe, right?" she asked quietly. There was a pause. "Yes," the voice answered. "For tonight you're safe." Her eyes closed as a tear finally escaped. "Thank you," she whispered. Footsteps moved away. She returned to the bed and lay down carefully beside her children. For the first time in years, she did not lie awake imagining the sound of a door being kicked open. Christmas Eve passed quietly. And in that quiet, a woman who had been broken down piece by piece began, slowly, cautiously, to put herself back together. Morning light slipped gently through the edges of the curtain. It wasn't harsh or blinding, just soft, as if it understood that fear needed time before it fully woke up. When the mother opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was what wasn't there. Panic. That realization startled her. She lay still for a moment, counting her breaths. Then she looked around. The small motel room. The quiet hum of the heater. Snowlight reflecting faintly through the window. This wasn't that house. She turned slowly. Her daughter was curled beneath the blanket, one hand tucked under the pillow, her face completely relaxed. The baby slept beside her. A tiny fist clenched as if, even in dreams, he was holding on to something important. Tears welled in the mother's eyes. She hadn't seen them sleep like this in years. She sat up carefully, afraid the moment might break if she moved too quickly. Sitting in the chair, she took a deep breath, one without urgency, without dread. This was the first morning in a long time that hadn't begun with fear. A soft knock came at the door. Her body tensed instantly. Old instincts stirred. Then a familiar, calm voice followed. "Good morning. It's me. I just wanted to check if you're all okay." She stayed quiet for a few seconds, steadying herself. Then she opened the door just a crack, leaving the chain on. The biker stood outside. No leather jacket today, just a plain sweater, jeans, and a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked ordinary, not threatening, just tired. "We're okay," the mother said, and stopped. She realized she was telling the truth. "That's good," he replied with a small nod. "Are the kids awake?" "Not yet," she answered softly. He set the coffee cup down and handed her a folded piece of paper. "This is the address of a nearby shelter," he said gently. "They help families. And this—" He passed her another page. "Legal aid. Free, especially for women." She stared at the papers, addresses, numbers, doors that had always felt closed to her. "I'm not forcing you," he added quickly. "The choice is yours. I just want you to know you have options." Options. The word echoed inside her chest. Just then, her daughter stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes. She noticed the biker and looked surprised, but not afraid. "You came back?" she asked. He smiled slightly, not wide, not dramatic. "I promised," he said. The girl climbed out of bed and stood beside her mother. "Mom, are we safe now?" The question didn't carry fear anymore. It carried hope. The mother rested her hand on her daughter's hair. "Yes," she said firmly. "We're safe now." The biker took a step back. "I'll be downstairs," he said. "If you need anything, breakfast, a ride, or just answers, let me know." He left quietly. The door closed. The mother sat back down, the papers still in her hands. These weren't just directions. They were possibilities. For the first time, she allowed herself to think beyond the next hour, beyond just surviving the day. Her daughter asked, "Mom, what are we going to do today?" The mother looked at her children, at the baby, now awake and blinking sleepily, at the girl, standing straighter than she ever had before. She smiled, a real smile, tired but steady. "Today," she said, "we're going to ask for help." There was no shame in her voice, because now she understood something she never had before. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's the next step toward living. Outside, the sun had fully risen. Snow glittered in its light. Christmas Eve was over. And for this mother, this morning wasn't about escape anymore. It was about moving forward. Getting ready took more than just fixing clothes. It took courage. The mother straightened the children's jackets, tightened loose shoelaces, and checked the bag again and again. Her eyes kept returning to the folded papers, the shelter address, the legal aid numbers. They were no longer just information. They were direction. Her daughter looked up while pulling on her shoes. "Mom, where are we going?" The question felt different today. This time, she had an answer. "We're going somewhere people will listen to us," the mother said. Her voice didn't shake. That surprised her. Outside, the cold air hit their faces, but it didn't cut as deeply as before. Fear had stayed behind in that motel room. The biker stood nearby, keys in his hand, as if he already knew this morning would matter. "Ready?" he asked simply. She nodded. "Yes." They walked toward the car. The daughter held her mother's hand tightly, but not in panic, just closeness. The baby slept in the back seat as the engine started. The city was waking up, stores opening, people heading to work, life moving forward. The mother watched it all through the window. The world didn't stop, she realized. "I did." After a few minutes, the biker spoke again. "If you want, we can go straight to the shelter," he said, "or the police station." The word made her chest tighten. The police station, the place she'd avoided for years, the place where questions lived, where truth had to be spoken out loud. She looked at her daughter's reflection in the window. Then at her sleeping baby. "We're going to the police station," she said. Saying it felt like sealing a promise. He didn't question her choice. He simply turned the wheel. When the building came into view, her heartbeat quickened. Old memories tried to rise, but she pushed them back. This time she wasn't alone. The car stopped. "I won't go inside," the biker said gently, "but I'll be right here." It wasn't an order. It was respect. She stepped inside with her children. Behind the counter, an officer looked up. "How can I help you?" For a moment, words failed her. Years of silence pressed against her throat. Then she began to speak. Not in dramatic detail. Not with anger. She spoke of nights filled with shouting, of fear that never slept, of children learning to be quiet too early. The officer listened, asked questions, calm, careful ones. She answered them all. With every sentence, her shoulders felt lighter. This wasn't confession. It was release. Paperwork followed. Forms, signatures. Her hand trembled as she signed, not from fear, but from responsibility. Her daughter stood close, listening. For the first time, she saw that telling the truth didn't bring punishment. When they stepped back outside, sunlight touched the mother's face. The same street, the same city, but she was not the same woman. The biker looked up. "Did it go okay?" She nodded. "Yes." Then she paused. "Thank you for bringing me here." He shook his head. "I just drove," he said. "You chose the road." A van pulled up, the shelters. She helped the children inside. Her daughter turned back. "Are you a hero?" she asked him softly. He smiled and shook his head. "No," he said. "Your mom is." The van pulled away. The mother watched the road disappear behind them. This story was no longer about running away. It was about standing up. When the van stopped in front of the shelter, the mother's heart began to race again. This fear wasn't like the one she'd felt on the road the night before. That fear had been sharp and immediate. This one was quieter, heavier. It was the fear of the unknown, of rules she didn't understand, of a life opening in front of her without instructions. She stepped out of the van slowly. Her daughter tightened her grip on her hand, and the baby rested against her chest, warm and awake. The building itself was simple, neither welcoming nor cold, just solid, real. Above the door, a sign made one thing clear. This wasn't a place to hide. It was a place to recover. The door opened. A woman stepped forward, somewhere in her 40s, dressed plainly. There was no forced smile on her face, only calm recognition. "You made it," she said gently. "We've been expecting you." The words startled the mother. Expecting me. No one had ever said that to her before. Inside, the shelter felt alive in a quiet way. Not silent, just steady. She heard soft laughter from somewhere down the hall. A child's voice, the sound of footsteps moving with purpose, not urgency. This wasn't a place where people waited for disaster. It was a place where people rebuilt after it. The mother finally lowered the bag from her shoulder. Only then did she realize how tightly she'd been gripping it. They were shown to a small room. 2 beds with clean white sheets, a narrow dresser, a window where sunlight poured in freely. Her daughter went straight to the window. "Mom, the sun comes in here," she said, amazed. The mother nodded but couldn't speak right away. Something thick pressed against her throat. Then the girl asked quietly, "There's no shouting here, right?" The mother knelt and pulled her daughter close. "No," she said firmly. "There's no shouting here." The baby, now fully awake, looked around with wide eyes. Everything was new. New smells, new sounds, new safety. The woman from the shelter spoke again. "Today you rest," she said. "Tomorrow we'll talk about school, paperwork, and next steps." Next steps. The phrase echoed in the mother's mind. For so long, her life had been about endurance, getting through the next hour, the next night. No one had ever talked to her about what came after. They were left alone. The door closed, but it wasn't locked. That detail mattered more than anything else. The mother sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands began to shake, even though nothing was wrong. Her body didn't know how to relax yet. It had learned to stay ready. "You're safe," she whispered to herself. "You're safe." Her daughter climbed onto the bed beside her and leaned her head against her shoulder. The baby gurgled softly, fascinated by the light on the wall. After a while, lunch arrived. Simple food, warm food. The mother noticed something strange as she ate. Her hands weren't shaking. It was a small thing, but it felt enormous. Later that afternoon, another woman came by and introduced herself as a counselor. "We won't do much today," she said kindly. "I just want you to know you're safe. We can talk tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word no longer felt threatening. Evening came slowly. The shelter quieted, but it didn't fall silent. Her daughter lay down easily, the baby beside her. Both drifted into sleep without fear pulling them back awake. The mother stood by the window and watched people pass outside. Cars moved, lights changed, life was continuing. She opened her hand unconsciously. For a moment, she could almost feel the weight of the motel key. And she remembered the biker's voice. Not dramatic, not heroic, just steady. She didn't know if she'd ever see him again. She didn't even know his real name, but she understood something now. Some people don't come into your life to stay. They come to stand with you at a turning point and make sure you don't turn back. She lay down carefully beside her children. Sleep came easier than she expected. Tomorrow wouldn't be easy. There would be forms, conversations, decisions she'd avoided for years. But the difference was this: she wouldn't face any of it alone. And that, more than anything, was what was changing her story. The next morning at the shelter felt different. This wasn't the kind of morning where fear dragged her out of bed. It was the kind where responsibility waited quietly, knowing she would have to face it. The mother woke early. Not to shouting, not to panic, but to her own thoughts. The room was still. Her daughter slept on her side, one arm tucked beneath the pillow. The baby's breathing was slow and steady, each rise and fall of his chest a reminder that safety was real, not imagined. She watched them for a long moment. Today would not be easy. Today, she would have to speak. After breakfast, a woman from the shelter came to meet her, a social worker. She carried a folder, but her eyes were warm, not clinical. "We'll go at your pace," the woman said gently. "You don't have to tell everything today." That single sentence loosened something inside the mother's chest. They sat in a small office, a desk, 2 chairs, a window that let the light in. "When you're ready," the social worker said, "you can start." The mother folded her hands together. For years, words had been locked inside her, buried under fear and survival. Now they pressed forward, demanding space. She began to talk. She didn't list every blow. She didn't count every scream. She spoke about what it felt like to wake up afraid, about learning to read moods instead of calendars, about children who learned silence before they learned joy. Her voice shook at times. Sometimes she stopped to breathe. Sometimes she closed her eyes. The social worker didn't interrupt, didn't doubt her, didn't ask for proof before believing. For the first time, the mother felt something unfamiliar. Her story was trusted. Papers were placed on the desk. A protective order, temporary housing, school arrangements for the children. Each page represented a step forward, heavy, but necessary. Her hand trembled as she picked up the pen. "What if I'm making the wrong choice?" she asked quietly. The social worker met her eyes. "The wrong choice isn't leaving abuse," she said. "The wrong choice is being forced to stay in it." The words settled deep. The mother signed, and with each signature something inside her loosened, like chains being quietly removed. Later, her daughter asked about school. "Mom, will I make new friends?" The mother smiled. "Yes," she said, "and they'll teach you how to laugh, not how to be afraid." The girl smiled back. A small smile, but real. In the afternoon, a legal advocate arrived, calm, clear, honest. He explained her rights, what protection meant, what boundaries would now exist. Then he said something she would never forget. "You are not required to live in fear." By evening, exhaustion settled into her bones, but it wasn't the kind that broke her down. It was the kind that came from doing something difficult and necessary. Back in their room, her daughter held her hand. "Mom, are we really going to be okay?" The mother paused. Then she answered with truth. "We're not fully okay yet," she said, "but we're on the way." That night she stood by the window and looked out at the dark. It no longer felt threatening. A face crossed her mind, a leather jacket, a quiet voice, unexpected kindness. She didn't know if she would ever see him again. Probably not. But she understood something now. Some people don't come into your life to stay forever. They come to stand with you at the most dangerous crossing and make sure you don't fall. Today, she had paid the price of telling the truth. And in return, she had tasted freedom for the first time. Tomorrow would not be the end, but it would be the beginning. Night settled gently over the shelter. Outside the window, streetlights glowed in steady lines, cars passed, and the world continued as it always had. But inside the small room, something had shifted. Quietly, permanently. The mother sat on the edge of the bed. Her daughter lay curled beside her beneath the blanket, already half asleep. The baby rested nearby, breathing slow and even, his face peaceful in a way she still wasn't used to seeing. Only days ago, these same children woke to shouting, to slammed doors, to fear that crept into their dreams. Now there was only silence. Safe silence. She brushed her daughter's hair back gently. "Go to sleep," she whispered. "Tomorrow is a new day." Her daughter's eyes fluttered closed, then opened again for a moment. "Mom," she murmured, "is it all over now?" The question was soft, honest, heavy. The mother paused before answering. "No," she said quietly. "Not everything ends all at once, but now we don't have to fight alone." That seemed to be enough. The girl nodded and drifted fully into sleep. The mother remained awake. She stood and walked to the window. The darkness outside no longer felt threatening. It felt calm, like the world finally exhaling. She opened her hand. There was nothing there. No key, no papers, no proof that any of this had really happened. And yet, she could feel it all. The frozen road, the falling snow, the moment a motorcycle had stopped behind her, the man in the leather jacket, the quiet voice, the help that came without demands. She knew she would probably never see him again. No chance to properly thank him, no way to repay what he had done. And maybe that was what real help looked like. Help that didn't wait for gratitude, that didn't ask to be remembered. Just as that thought settled in her chest. There was a knock at the door. Her heart jumped. Not with the sharp terror of before, but with the echo of it, old fear waking up out of habit. She turned and looked at her sleeping children. Both were still. Safe. The knock came again. Gentle, respectful. She walked to the door, her steps slow, placed her hand on the handle, took a breath. "Who is it?" she asked quietly. A familiar voice answered from the other side. "It's me, just for a minute." She opened the door. He stood there. Not in a leather jacket this time, just simple clothes, no edge, no intimidation. In his hands were two bags. One held toys, small, colorful, carefully chosen. The other held warm clothes, diapers, and a few everyday necessities. For a moment, she couldn't speak. "I heard you made it here," he said, his voice calm, almost hesitant. "I thought the kids might need a few things." He placed the bags gently by the door. Didn't step inside, didn't cross the threshold. Then he looked at her. Not with pity, not with pride. Just honesty. "And listen," he added after a pause, "if life ever gets hard again, anytime, just tell me. You're not alone." Her eyes filled instantly. "You've already done more than enough," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't even know how to—" He shook his head gently. "No," he said. "I just did what anyone should do." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he took a step back. "I should go," he said quietly. "You're strong, and your kids, they're safe now." She looked at him one last time. She knew it then. This really was goodbye. "Thank you," she said. Just one word. But it carried everything. He gave a small nod. No speech, no dramatic farewell. Then he turned and walked away. The door closed softly. The mother picked up the bags and placed the toys beside the bed. She sat down, looking at her children, feeling something unfamiliar but welcome settle in her chest. Peace. She knew she might never see him again, never properly thank him, never repay what he had given. But now she understood something she hadn't before. Some people don't enter your life to stay forever. They arrive at the moment you need proof that kindness still exists, and then they step away. That night, she lay down beside her children. No nightmares came. No sudden sounds made her flinch. No fear waited in the dark. Only sleep. The next morning, the sun would rise. There would be paperwork, school meetings, hard days ahead. But there would also be laughter, healing, a future built without fear. Christmas Eve had tried to break her. Instead, it set her free. And somewhere out there, another road waited, and maybe another life would one day be changed by someone who chose to stop and simply be human. This story is not just a story. It reflects a reality that millions of women and children quietly live every day, behind closed doors, behind forced smiles, behind fear. If you see yourself in this mother, hear this clearly. Leaving abuse is not weakness. Asking for help is not failure. Surviving takes courage. Help doesn't always arrive the way the world expects. Sometimes it comes from people we're taught to fear. Sometimes it comes without conditions, without credit, without reward. And sometimes, all it takes is one safe night to change a lifetime. If this story touched you, like this video to help it reach someone who needs hope, share it, because you never know who is silently struggling. Comment if you believe kindness can come from unexpected places, most important of all. If you or someone you know is facing abuse right now, please reach out to local helplines, shelters, or trusted people. You deserve safety. Your children deserve peace. Your life matters. This is not the end of anyone's story. It is proof that tomorrow can be different. Stay strong, stay kind, and never stop believing that help is possible.